At the height of Amir Timur's power, the Ming dynasty, another major and formidable state that had been established in China, was also reaching the peak of its strength. The Great Silk Road, which began in China, was highly significant for the economic relations of that era and played a major role in ties between the two states. Historical sources note that relations between Amir Timur and the Ming dynasty deteriorated in 1397, when Ming envoys came to Amir Timur demanding that he recognize himself as a vassal of China and pay tribute. Such a demand would naturally have enraged a commander and ruler like Amir Timur, and from that point on, he began preparations for a military campaign against China. The two great empires began diplomatic disputes, while at the same time trying to gather intelligence and conduct reconnaissance. For a while, Timur's attention was focused on Western campaigns around Iran, Iraq, the Caucasus, and Anatolia, so the China question did not immediately turn into a full-scale expedition. Nevertheless, the China question remained on the court agenda as a potential major campaign. Amir Timur set off for China with an army of 600,000 men and paid his soldiers 7 years' wages in advance. He also ordered that each soldier be given 2 cows and 2 goats to meet basic needs at the start of the campaign. This is presented as another example of Timur's reputation as a fair and orderly ruler who treated the well-being of his army as a priority. On the Ming side, military preparations are reported to have lasted almost 7 years. The Chinese army is said to have reached up to 2 million soldiers. However, the Ming forces were not suited for long, prolonged expeditions. They lacked experience crossing vast, waterless deserts and climbing high mountain ranges. The army also suffered from a shortage of war horses. Since horses were relatively scarce in China, Ming cavalrymen were not always fully skilled in riding and maneuvering. Strategically and tactically, these factors are described as giving Timur's forces a clear advantage. Amir Timur, who had grown up in the nomadic steppe tradition, and his Mongol allied soldiers were accustomed to highly mobile, fast-moving cavalry warfare. The Chinese emperor clearly understood that he would not be able to organize an effective defense quickly against such forces. In addition, the Chinese army had begun to use cannons more widely in defensive battles. Chinese cannons were typically cast with iron or cast iron barrels and were designed to fire stone or metal projectiles. Today, the oldest surviving firearms-type cannons preserved in China are generally dated to 1351. However, in this period, it was not yet possible to maintain steady, continuous fire. The barrels overheated quickly, and as a result, the weapons could malfunction or become temporarily unusable. This indicates that during combat, they could not reliably provide the level of support the army needed. Based on the facts and considerations outlined above, one can argue that even though Amir Timur's planned campaign against China would likely have been a long operation, the chances of victory would have favored Timur to a greater extent. In late 1404, Amir Timur turns toward yet another enormous plan. To the east, a campaign toward China. From Samarkand, his forces set out in stages. The objective is clear: to gather strength for a major expedition. January 1405, a key point along the Sir Daria, Otrar. Timur stops there. The army concentrates. Supplies are inspected. Final pre-campaign arrangements are put in place. But the winter is exceptionally harsh. Bitter cold, cutting wind, and the strain of the long road. Some sources say Timur's troops were afraid to cross the river in the freezing conditions, and that Timur crossed it alone, after which he fell ill. Popular accounts sometimes raise theories such as poisoning, but it is difficult to confirm that with reliable historical evidence. In academic interpretations, the factors most often emphasized are the hardships of travel, severe cold, and illness. Late January, the signs of sickness appear: weakness, fever, heaviness. The start of the campaign slows, and then is delayed entirely. By early February, the illness worsens, his condition steadily declines. Around him are emirs, close companions, physicians, but the medicine of that era was not always capable of stopping a severe illness. February 1405, the Otrar camp is no longer a gateway to the campaign, but becomes the final stop of fate. February 18th, 1405, in some sources, February 19th, Amir Timur dies in Otrar. And with that, the China campaign ends before it begins. After Timur, the future of the empire, succession struggles, and the trials of a new era begin.